just on my first cup. How many cups you on, Dr. Palmer?
I have had one.
Okay.
Normally I've had two by now, but
I
I've
know,
I've
that's
had
what's
I've had I've had one cup so
all
far.
right.
All
Not to
right.
put a damper on it, but I did see on the news where the price of coffee is going up. I don't want the price of coffee to go up.
Man, I was so annoyed yesterday. Did you all know that yesterday was National Coffee Day?
Yes,
And then
yes,
I'm
yes.
running they listed all the places that had this free coffee, right? So I think I ended
Uh-huh.
up going to Dunkin'. I was calling people. I was like, I think I might have said Dunkin' Donuts. And then when we get there, oh, you have to buy something to get the free coffee. I was like, okay, this coffee's not really free if you're making me buy a donut. I was
Hmm.
so annoyed.
Oh, well, to all the coffee drinkers, yes.
Uh, anyway,
Yesterday was National Coffee Day.
yeah. All right. I guess we've got just about a whole class here.
All right.
Want to get started?
All right. Well, welcome back. We're here at session 2 for board governance. We're delighted to have to see some faces out there. Thanks for having your video on if you're able, as you're able. It really helps us to feel like we're more close to in person as we possibly can be, even though we're virtual. So today's session is on board governance. Go ahead and be sure to update the name in Zoom so we can keep track of attendance. Hopefully everybody received the reminder email that had the workbook pages for today attached if you should need them. All the workbooks have gone out, so hopefully you've received yours. If not, hopefully you'll get it this week. If you don't receive it, by the end of the day today, if you'll send me an email so I can know about that. We have in the past occasionally had to resend some books, but I'm hoping we won't have to do that, but we may need to. So thanks for bearing with us when it comes to that. I know that can be stressful for some folks, not having the pages right in front of them all bound together. So thanks for bearing with us. Similar to last time, feel free to use the chat for any questions you may have. We're going to be going in breakout rooms here and there too as well. So you'll be selecting a breakout room based on your role. And like I said, we encourage everyone to have their video on as they're able. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisa, to go over the agenda and pop
Yep.
us into our first breakout.
Yep. So as you can see on the board, folks, here's your full agenda for today. Now, board governance ends up being one of our, uh, I would say, most interactive topic. We get a lot of questions, and we try in the chat as well as vocally. So that's great. So Rebecca and I will do our best to keep up with the questions in the chat and get them to Dr. Palmer as needed. But otherwise, we're going to start the day off with some conversation. Um, we will have some breaks throughout as we go, but there's a lot of intense information in this particular session, so breaks may be short, and we can't tell you exactly. We have a pretty good feel by now of when breaks are needed amongst the group. And then also wanted to add, we will also share our participant contact list in the wraparound after today's session, so you can see who your fellow cohort members are in case you want to reach out. You made some kind of connection in the breakout room the way you wanted to continue a conversation, and we really encourage that. So with that, you can see I'm not going to read each one, but you can just see what's ahead of us today. And as the plane revs on the runway and getting ready to take off, let's start with the breakout. And what you're going to do, you're going to take just 10 minutes, right? Just to get acquainted again, just some really brief introductions. Um, and just talk about what is it that your nonprofit organization is known for. Now I'm talking past the mission, right? Keep it brief. What's something that you want to brag about in reference to your organization? And you can share that amongst in your group. And like Rebecca said, you'll be able to share. You'll be able to go into your breakout by role, and she'll put that up. And we'll do this, I think, again, for about 10 minutes, right, guys?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
So let's do it.
All right.
Again, you're going to talk about what your nonprofit's known for, past your mission, and something you want to brag about.
Folks are selecting their room. We'll see you back here in about 10.
Even if it isn't about their own, even if it isn't about their own organization, anything? One or two people, not many.
I would love to share. Thank you guys.
Great.
for
Thank you, my fellow Lisa.
Yeah. Thank you for that exercise, because I was very excited to learn that there are organizations that I can immediately connect other people in my local area to being able to benefit from the services that they have to provide. Most importantly, and I say most importantly, but everything is important. Most importantly, one that is serving an elderly population that often gets forgotten about their exercise and being in nature and things like that. So thank you guys for that breakout.
Oh, great. And were you able to, you have their contact information, or you have what you need to do that, to reach?
No, I heard you guys say we're
Yeah,
gonna do it, so I
we
told you I
will.
couldn't wait to get it.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you,
I'm
Lisa. I
sorry, my
appreciate
video
that.
stays off because my internet is unstable, and so I'll be losing some of this stuff. So sorry
Great.
about that.
It's fine.
And there
One
will
more?
be the
Oh, sorry.
participant list. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, Lisa, you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that the list will be available, so.
Can we get one more from someone who maybe heard something interesting or want to share?
I love the fact that we were sort of kind of interconnected with people in my group. We our target audience is the different stages of growth and development within the for children. And two of the ladies in the group, they had a more direct connection because one organization funded the operations or the program of the other organization.
Hmm.
It was really nice. We had a really good conversation, getting to know one another and see
Wow.
the first person serviced the children from birth to a certain age, and then the second organization was adolescents, and then of course with me being on a college campus, I'm at that third stage before adulthood. So it was really interesting to see.
Great. Thank you for sharing. And again, guys, remember, that's the whole point of this cohort, for you all to connect. And then again, we know we're virtual, but the best way that we can connect is through the breakout rooms. Rebecca's going to talk about a poll, questions, stuff later that keep us interacted and interrelated. So just keep it up, and thank you for the sharing for that. So with that, Dr. Palmer, I think I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, again, good morning. Hope everyone is doing well, and glad you were able to kick off our work today with getting acquainted with your colleagues that are part of the cohort. We're going to jump right into our work. And so team, if we could go to slide 5, which is the agenda. So our agenda for today, we've already taken care of our introduction, so welcome again. We are going to take a look at our capacity assessment results and findings as one cohort, and just kind of talk about what emerged out of your participation in completing the capacity assessment. Our topic today is board governance and oversight. I'll go ahead and tell you that we could spend an entire day on all of these topics. As a matter of fact, we could do a series on every topic. So keep in mind that we will have an opportunity at the end for office hours. So if there's if there's a question that you have and you are not able to have that question answered during the session today, there will be some time afterwards. So we're going to talk about and kind of dig into duties and expectations of our board of directors, the role of the board as it relates to financial management and fundraising responsibilities, the fact that our board of directors oftentimes is instrumental in making sure that we have the personnel and the human resources that we need, keeping in mind that our board of directors is a group of volunteers. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Accountability and evaluation, composition of boards. And then we also are going to spend some time referencing our bylaws and how the bylaws guide the work of a board. and legal compliance. Grab a piece of paper, pen or pencil or marker. If you're an artist, you might have more tools than that. So kind of grab that. We're going to get to that in a moment. So again, this is our agenda for today. Keep in mind the format and the design of the Institute. I shared this with us last week when we met for the first time. We can go to the next slide. You've already experienced the fact that each of us have different roles as it relates to how we work and serve in nonprofit organizations. And so hopefully engaging in the breakout rooms and spaces by role is helpful. We'll mix that up as we move along, but we do want you to get to know each other based on that. The other thing to remember is that the topics that we're covering in the Institute are what we consider to be some of the fundamental management functions. As we stated last week, there are 12 principles or management functions that we illuminate here at the center. However, in this Institute, we are focusing on 6. Keep in mind that we do utilize a workshop style as it relates to how we facilitate the Institute. And so we have interactive features kind of embedded in the way in which we facilitate. We're not what we would consider to be a traditional webinar. So sometimes if you have to step away and come back, you might feel like you are a little lost in kind of what we're doing. But just kind of jump right back in and know that we do have interactive features and we're building on information as we go. So that's kind of the cadence. So just want to remind you of that. We try to minimize homework and pre-reading and try to do all of what we do in the session. We also update and rework sessions based on your feedback. So the evaluations that you complete, we do debrief after every session and we try to incorporate real time as best we can your feedback. But again, keep in mind, there is a particular design and format to this Institute. And so we just want to remind you of that. I already mentioned that we do have what we call our office hour at the end of each session. So if there are questions that you have, you can always ask those questions at that time. Moving right along with our work today, you can go to the next slide. So as we mentioned last week, our framework for the way in which we explain, train, describe managing nonprofit organizations is couched in our capacity building framework here at the center. We do have a principles and practices guide that we've shared with you. We have the one guide, we have 12 principles, nonprofit management principles. We take a look at and try to understand the current management condition of a nonprofit organization, be it that it is in a condition of build, thrive, or sustain. We talked about that last week. The other thing to keep in mind too is that we do have a basic capacity assessment. And then we also have what we call an advanced practices assessment. That is the assessment that you completed. And we're going to go over that here in just a minute. So one guide, 3 management conditions, 12 principles, 216 practices, and 2 assessments. That is what makes up our framework here at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. We can keep going. So in your workbook, and this is a good time for us to check in team as to who has their workbook versus not. In your workbook, if you would go to page 84, you're going to see what you see here on the screen. So let's just do a quick check. Does everybody have your workbook or have access to the workbook? I see Jacqueline, your hand.
You are not on my.
Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing. I do have it.
Okay,
Hold on.
all right,
Okay, hello.
okay.
Hey, how are you?
Yes, yes, just want to make sure that you have your tools. Randy says he does not. Um, we did provide you with the electronic version last week. I think we provided that link in the chat. I see, I only see, I'm thinking, is it Randy? And I don't see any others that are showing that they don't have it. Again, we don't want to leave anybody behind. We want everybody to try to move through this experience, having what we need.
Yeah, I don't see anyone else popping in.
Okay,
Leslie speaking of
Okay.
popping, Leslie put the handouts there in the chat if you should need them for any reason to download.
okay,
Otherwise, we
okay.
should be good.
Okay. All right. Okay, so one of the things that we did want to lift up this morning is kind of how we describe what capacity is, capacity assessment and capacity building. And so when we think about the capacity of a nonprofit, and might I add, if you're doing any type of your own just kind of research and, just trying to learn more about determining where your organization is currently as it relates to capacity and maybe growing. If you search by way of capacity building for nonprofits or nonprofit organizations and capacity, you'll find varied descriptions of what we have here on the screen and what you have in your workbook. But the long and short of it is that capacity of a nonprofit is reflected in the organization's ability to manage, grow, and develop. And of course, our growth and development and the way in which we lead and manage our nonprofits is to achieve the mission and the vision. And so capacity, ability to manage in that context. Capacity assessment, it is a process, and that process includes a review and examination of the current management condition. We introduced you to this last week. And we're looking at the management condition to determine the principles and practices that we want or need to enhance so that we can continue to grow and develop. So capacity assessment. We have the basic and the advanced capacity assessment that is incorporated in your workbook. And then once we have an understanding of where we are, we then begin to map out a plan to build our capacity. We look at that as being the implementation of strategies and techniques that will help us to grow and to help us to achieve our mission and vision. And those strategies and techniques might be training. It may be going out and get consultation. It might be coaching. It varies in terms of what those strategies and techniques might be. And you might even add what those tools might be as it relates to building capacity. So capacity assessment, capacity building. And again, this is our framework in terms of moving into an institute that trains us, explains to us 6 of what we consider to be those fundamental management functions of a nonprofit organization. We want to turn now to the results and findings of our capacity assessment for the cohort. And team, if we could go to gallery for just a minute and kind of remind us how and where the assessment results are.
Sure. So each of you should have received an email from either myself or Leslie with your individual results back of the things that you checked off from each of the management conditions and the 6 principles we cover in this series. Those things you want to work on in the next year or so. And that's just for your benefit to have those things. But we also compile a summary that ranks sort of the top most selected things out of this cohort. So usually about the top 3 that folks seem to want to work on so that we know what to focus on in each of our sessions with you all. So Dr. Palmer, did you want me to share that so we can go over it just briefly? I know we don't want to spend
Yes.
too much time on it, but
That is correct. Yes.
okay. Let me go
Thank you.
ahead and share that with you. I also put it in the chat if you want to download it. It's there in the chat. But here is the summary here. And
Thank
we'll
you.
start with board governance.
Yes. So as it relates to board governance, remember when we completed the assessment, we were indicating what we wanted to work on over the next year. And so 62% of us, right, that completed the assessment indicated that we wanted to work on ensuring board members have an understanding of day-to-day operations. Under Build, and then under Thrive, the number 1 area was expect board members to volunteer their time, raise funds, and make financial contributions to the nonprofit. So those were the top 2. If we had a third, it would be under Sustain, ensure board members understand their roles and evaluate their performance and receive ongoing training. So those were the top kind of 3 kind of areas or practices that we indicated that we want to work on within the year. One of the things that I would encourage you to do, however, keep in mind that the board of directors is responsible for governance and oversight of the organization. And we're going to get into detail on that here in a minute. The day-to-day operations, it's important for them to have a general understanding of that. But be mindful that their job, their role, their commitment, their volunteering on the board is for governance and oversight of the entire organization. A general understanding of day-to-day operations is necessary, but make sure they stay in their lane. And I'm speaking as a board member, make sure we stay in our lane. The next topic or the next area of managing a nonprofit was program design, management, and evaluation. The top 2 were under Build, consulting with community partners to determine the need for programs and services. And then the second was understanding the landscape of other organizations that provide similar or complementary programs in the community. So it's always good to know other entities in the community or resources that either align or might mimic with the programs and services that your organization provides. I would say the consult with community partners is probably more important than ever these days. Partnering and collaborating is so important in terms of us achieving our goals and our outcomes, of which that was number 1 under Thrive. Strategic planning. 70% of us indicated that over the next year that we want to document success and lessons learned. We should celebrate successes. A lot of times we don't, but we should celebrate the successes of our organizations and take those lessons learned and make adjustments. And so, but that was the number 1 that we want to focus on within the next year. Financial management. The number 1 is under Sustain that we want to work on for the next year. Identify and implement new revenue generating strategies. This sometimes can be difficult. What I would encourage us to do is to give it time, right? So whatever revenue generating strategies you decide that you want to implement, give it time to stick and stay. A lot of times when a strategy or an approach or a tool that we use to bring in more dollars, if it doesn't happen quickly, a lot of times we will lay it down too early. And so just give it time. It's tough, it's challenging, it takes time, it can be achieved. But you kind of have to study it and pay attention to those strategies that you're implementing and be intentional about kind of keeping up, monitor, tracking. Is it generating the revenue that we need? If not, then what do we need to add to what it is that we're doing, or what do we need to adjust? The other thing I would say about the identifying and implementing new revenue generating strategies involve the program staff as well, and individuals that are working with programs, because oftentimes there may be opportunities as it relates to the programs that we are providing. There may be opportunities to have some earned income as it relates to that. So keep that in mind. Fundraising. Our number one area here is set up a donor database to maintain records of donor giving. Under build and under sustain, it's present, plan, giving opportunities to donors. Setting up a donor database to maintain records of donor giving is a good first step. But what we want to do is manage that database. So we want to study we want to segment our donor database or donors within the database. And we want to study and strategize around how to create or what those donors prefer. And how to create profiles. Again, this is another one of those instances where we have to give it time. If we're trying to reach out to individuals, for example, who have recently retired, the way in which we communicate with them might be different than the way in which we communicate in terms of the tools and mechanisms and such. And so just keep in mind, when you set up the donor database, remember it has to be managed. And managing it means studying, reviewing, understanding your donors based on segmented groups, and then how do we best interface with them to generate giving. And then, of course, planned giving opportunities, also having that mechanism in place to actually introduce and present to individuals who might leave us a gift in a bequest or something like that. Human resources, number one area that we said that we want to work on. 67% of us indicated that we want to provide staff and volunteers with job descriptions and the tools to produce quality work. And so that's important as well. Oftentimes in nonprofit organizations, we may have small staff. And so many of us are doing a variety of jobs, if you will. So it is important to continue to inform your staff, continue to inform your volunteers about what your expectations are, keeping in mind that we can contract for resources, human resources, and then also we can outsource for human resources. So just kind of keep that in mind. Wow, that was our results and findings from doing the capacity assessment. Might I say, just for all practical purposes, as one organization. And you can do the same with this tool within your own individual organizations. Was there anything that we shared in those results that were surprising to you, or that you have a comment about? And again, you have your individual that you should have received, and you also have the results and findings for the whole, I'll just say organization. We're one big nonprofit here in looking at these results. Any initial reaction to your assessment or what we shared?
I do have a question of sorts, especially when you talk about paying people livable wages based on the responsibilities. Based on industry standards, they're not livable wages. So where should we even in considering budgeting and trying to plan for that, where should we as nonprofit operators try to fit in there? So that's kind of confusing for me.
Rebecca, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously, presenting a balanced budget to the board, your board, and using your board as a real help in terms of getting you to a living wage that's more in line with what's industry standards. I will say that we also need to take into account other things that nonprofits provide to their employees as a benefit to them. So sometimes if you're not able to give the salary that you'd like to, you're not quite where you want to be in terms of living wage or the industry standard. I think it's also helpful for you to show how you're able to give other benefits to folks. So is it more time off? Is it a more flexible schedule? What are some other things that I would like to hear from you all. What are some other things that you all are offering to your staff to compensate them and give them more flexibility, give them more perks, benefits as employees? I think we need to look at the whole picture oftentimes.
Mhm. And I know we at the center, several years ago, we did a livable wage study. It might be a little dated, but I'm not sure if that would be helpful.
Yeah.
At least as a starting point as to how to think about that.
Yeah, we have a somewhat outdated compensation report at
Yeah.
this point. We need to
Yeah.
redo it. It's a big
Mhm.
process though, because it's a survey, and so we have to have a partner
Mhm.
that will run the survey. And then we have to have a producer of the actual report that comes out with it. If anyone's interested in that, I can share. We're just sharing that report with anyone. And what you can do is you can look at, based on role, what the compensation was back in 2022, 2023. There are inflation calculators that you can implement to show what the inflation rate is, and you can then determine what that rate should be. Another sneaky way that I like to tell folks to do is to go into our jobs board and to look for certain roles and see. We require that there is pay transparency, so you can see what ranges people are offering for certain roles and positions. And you can search by that role in our jobs board. So it's really comprehensive. You're able to kind of see, oh, what other benefits are they providing at this salary range for this type of position? And that's one way I think it's good to get a pulse on what others are paying for certain roles and duties assigned to that role.
Okay. And that is, that particular question aligns with the human resources topic, and it's under sustain. If some of you might be wondering where that question came from, it's the third item under sustain, under human resources. So,
Yep.
and we do have a little bit of interest in that, in that report.
Yep.
So, if we don't have any questions at the moment, we're going to move into our topic for today. And our topic for today is board governance and oversight. It is 10:16. Let's take about a 5-7 minute Zoom break. Zoom breaks are different than in-person break, in-person break. So, it is 10:16. So team, do we want to come back at 10:20 or 10:25 or something like that? Does that work? Yes,
Yeah,
10:25.
let's do 10:25.
All right, I
That
see
sounds
some
good.
head nodding. Okay, all
Sounds
right.
good. Thanks, everyone.
Mhm. So, again, keep in mind that the Institute is designed to illuminate the fundamentals of these 6 management functions. So, we're gonna get started. Rebecca, I think you're up with the LinkedIn group page poll results.
Sure. I actually don't know that we had any responses to it, but I do wanna share the page just so folks can
Okay,
familiar with it. Real quick, very briefly. This is the page that you'll see when you join. Looks like everyone who had requests to join or were pending have been approved. We gave a little welcome to you all where you can comment. Thanks, Lisa, for responding to the welcome post. And then this was our question that we put in here, was just about how to develop an engaged, more active board. I'm sure we'll talk more about it today as we get through this topic, but this is what it looks like. Feel free to create your own post if you have something you want to share, you want to ask the group. This is a great resource to you all, and hope you'll take advantage of it.
All right, great. If you would turn to in your workbooks to page 31. So we want to begin this topic of board governance and oversight, just thinking about your own individual boards of directors, and then also your board members. Keep in mind that each nonprofit organization has a different structure. However, it is the bylaws that guide the work of the board and of board members. And so I just want to ask a question. You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute and share with your voice. How is your board of directors set up? So what is the structure of your board?
Can you expound on that? I don't understand.
Mhm. Yeah, so how does your board work? How does the board of directors work? How does it function? How is
So
it set up?
we
Mhm.
have to have like certain positions where we're based in Wilmington. And I think it's the state structure of Smart Start. So any large company has to have a representative on the board, and then any stakeholders have to have a representative on the board. So, for instance, if we had somebody roll off that was the department chair of a child care center, we would have to replace that position with another department head.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So there are some nonprofit organizations that are established in partnership with government, right? And the North Carolina Partnership for Children is one of those types of nonprofits. So there is a North Carolina Center for Nonprofits hub, and you all reel me in if I'm not explaining this as it is. But there is a hub, and then there are Partnership for Children offices located throughout the state. The board of directors has a composition that's unique to communities, yes, but then there's also an expectation that there are going to be certain stakeholders on that board. Like, for example, I was trying to find the person that was talking, and I couldn't yeah. So it may be a business owner that has to be on there. It may be a person with lived experience. It may be a teacher. It may be the librarian. It may be, so it could be that there are some required roles on the board. So we're talking about composition of your board. Anybody else? How does your board work? How is it set up? How's the board of directors set up?
I would like to speak about our board, which is incredible. We have we're mandated to have a recovered victim on our board, but we also have, we made up a requirement that we have to have one from, like you said, the stakeholders. So our partners, which we're domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. So we have an officer on the board. We have DSS on the board. We have someone from the hospital on the board. We have somebody representing the churches on our board, and schools on our board, and they understand their roles in every aspect. We also have committees that it's not just the board, but a board member is over a committee that involves other people in the community. I've got to say, I've got a really incredible board. I mean, every single one of them are involved. We got the college on our board. That ensures that we are held accountable to partner with them. Like, we can't forget that, oh yeah, we're supposed to be working with the colleges.
Thank you for,
And it works out really, really well. I also have some finance people on my board as well.
all right, thank you. So composition is, that's more of kind of the individuals that are serving on the board and the roles that they are in your community. I also heard Cecilia mention committees. So some board of directors have committees. One more, anybody else? How does your board of directors work? If I were to come to a board meeting, what would I see? What would be taking place?
I'll go.
I'm happy.
We currently have a we're merging, or we have a joint venture that we're working on with a larger nonprofit that was planning to sunset. So our meetings right now, there's actually one going on right now where the two boards are combining finally, and making decisions about who will stay on from the old board. Also committee, like setting up one committee that's a merger committee, so that decisions can be made about kind of going forward, asset acquirements, liabilities, kind of clearing all that stuff, and the due diligence process for this. So but eventually it'll go back to being like just a governing board with chair, treasurer, secretary, those three positions. We currently have 9 members, and the other board has 8. So 17 is a lot. Board members, especially
Okay.
when you're trying to keep them engaged or, kind of active. So making those
Okay.
decisions.
Awesome, thank you. And Tiffany mentioned officers. So for a lot of board of directors, there is a president of the board or chair of the board. There is a vice chair. Sometimes there's a chair-elect, there's a secretary, there's a treasurer. And depending upon how your nonprofit board is set up, you could have some additional roles that's a part of your officer, or what we might consider your executive committee. So that's another facet of how a board of directors is set up. Some of your boards meet yearly. Some boards only meet once a year. Some meet every month. Some meet quarterly. It just depends on how your nonprofit organization is set up. Look with me on page 31. So our board of directors is the governing body. It is the governing body of most nonprofit organizations or 501c organizations. We are expected to have responsibilities to help us to govern. And some of those responsibilities are legal and ethical responsibilities to the organization. As a board member and a part of a board of directors, we are to assist, advise, and help establish policy as it relates to that nonprofit organization. But overarching, we are expected to provide governance and oversight. It does vary. Some nonprofit organizations are volunteer only. There are no paid staff. It is the volunteers that operate and run that nonprofit. What I will say that even in those in a setup like that, typically there is a person who emerges as kind of being the point person, and since it's football season, I'll say quarterback of the organization. So sometimes that is the case. So we have volunteer-led, strictly volunteer-led nonprofit organizations. And then obviously we have nonprofits that are led by paid staff. And so it doesn't necessarily mean the work is any different. It just means who's doing the work might be paid or non-paid. And so that's important to remember. When we are a board member, we are a part of the board of directors, but there are some expectations of the board, and then there are expectations of individual board members. So as a board member, I serve on the board of directors of nonprofit organizations with the purpose of contributing to strategizing and decision-making of that nonprofit. However, it relates back to my service, relates back to governance and oversight. Paying attention to what's happening with the organization such that it's successful and that we are working towards our mission and towards our vision. Board of directors, board members, board of directors, board members. Important for us to kind of understand how that is different. In terms of what we mean by board governance and oversight, we want to look at this from two different perspectives or lenses. And team, if we could go to slide 17. So I want to pose a question. When you look at this image, what are your thoughts about whether or not board governance and oversight is a science or an art? What are your thoughts about that? Is board governance a science or an art? Board governance and oversight. And you can pop that in the chat, and team, if you want to help me out by seeing what folks are saying.
Yeah, both, a lot of boths. A lot of boths, still boths.
Is it a science or is it an art? Now, the way in which you answer this question has a whole lot to do, I know, with your experience, right? With working with a board or observing a board or not. So, Lisa, did you say you see a lot of boths?
A
Is
lot
that
of
what you said?
boths.
Oh, okay.
Maybe a couple of people said they lean toward the art, but for the
Okay.
most part,
Okay.
we're getting boths.
Mm-hmm.
Got a both,
Yeah.
but I lean
Yeah.
toward science.
Ah, yes. So let me add a little bit more, a few more nuggets to this. So in terms of thinking about science, logic, analysis, communication, methodology, the like, right? Art, intuition, creativity, emotions, relationships, the human element of the work that we do. So consider this, consider that board governance and oversight is a science as it relates to management. And when we are managing, let's just say the board of directors, we are leaning into what the bylaws tell us. The bylaws help us to manage the board, the structure, right? The expectations, when we meet, how often we meet, how do we vote? You know, all of those things are managing the board of directors, management. So science, managing the board of directors by way of the bylaws versus art, which may be more of leadership in terms of the people and the human capacity of our board. Working with, building relationships, the interpersonal dynamics that plays out as it relates to board governance and oversight. I lean more towards it takes both. It takes both. It takes management skills and it also takes leadership skills, board governance and oversight, governance and oversight. Our focus is the management in this institute. Our focus is management. Management of an engaged and active board the mechanics of managing a board of directors is what we focus on in this institute. Recognizing that it does take leadership skills. And what I would also add to that, when you have a executive director or a CEO that is compensated to manage and lead the day-to-day operations of that nonprofit, that individual is working directly with the board of directors as it relates to this science and art, so management and leadership. So that's important to keep in mind. And oftentimes the president of the board or the chairperson of the board is working in partnership with that executive director or CEO as to the mechanics of how the board should function. They're working together as well as with the officers. We are all sharing in leadership, right? And participating and being engaged on the board. So that's important to think about. Any initial reaction to this outside of what we see in the chat? Any initial reaction outside of what we see in the chat? Or response or comment? Team, I don't see any. So seeing none, we're going to move right into the structure of a nonprofit organization. So if you would take out a piece of paper, and draw this image. Take out a piece of paper and draw this image. I'm gonna pause here and give you about 60 seconds to draw this image.
Would
We
it be
do have some,
beneficial? Oh, I'm sorry. Would it be beneficial to have this in our actual book? Like, can I just do it on the bottom of page 31?
sure, if that's where you want to place it, absolutely. Yep. You sure can.
Keep all this information together.
Yeah. One of the things that we highlight here is understanding how a nonprofit organization is structured traditionally. Now, we know that nonprofits set up the way in which we do the work. It could be set up different than this. However, this is what we see most often. And so, let me know if you have your visual drawn, and then place these items over to the left. Place these items in the boxes. So board of directors, executive director, volunteers, staff, 4 board committees.
Can you say that one more time, please?
On the left side of the screen is where I'm reading it from. Board of directors, you're placing it on the org chart. Board of directors, executive director, volunteers, staff, 4 board committees. We need, is it Jeopardy music? Not Jeopardy. Is that the music when you're writing down?
That's
I don't
it.
know.
That's my
I don't
favorite.
watch Jeopardy, huh?
That's it. That's my favorite.
Yeah, we need Jeopardy music. Okay, I'm gonna give us I don't know, 10, 20 more seconds to fill this in. Okay. I'm gonna have the team show us the filled in drawing and let's see how you did. Lisa, let's see how many folks got all of this correct. I bet most of us did, right?
That's what it
All
looks like
right.
so far. And again, like Dr. Palmer emphasized, some structures can look different because I know over the past maybe year and a half, Dr. Palmer, or 2 years, you've been running into structures where there are two EDs, right?
Yes.
Two
Yes.
code, and then their structure looks totally different. So again, this is just what we traditionally see. So we
Mhm.
recognize that. Anyone want to say if they had something different and maybe explain maybe why? Maybe that's the way they have theirs set up and that's how they filled it in. That would be interesting to hear. Doesn't mean you're wrong. Just different.
Just different.
Just
Yes.
different.
So our organization, Digital Durham, we are entirely volunteer led. So we just don't have the middle piece, the
Okay.
staff and the ED. We do have under board of directors, there is also an executive committee, which is basically it consists of chairs of the committees that, like finance and fundraising and outreach and so on. So we have a little bit of that, extra layer in between.
Okay.
And
Which
there
makes
could be
sense.
more than the 4 committees that we have. And thank you for, Sanjay, for lifting up the executive committee. The executive committee is comprised of the officers typically. We can add individuals to the executive committee, if that's something we want to do, if there's a resource that we need. And then there are different committees that are unique to each nonprofit. We just use 4 in this example, but it could be less than that. It could be more than that. Those committees are set up to help perform the duties and responsibilities of the board members. Board members serve on committees. For some nonprofit organizations, it's written in the bylaws that I, as a board member, is expected to serve on a committee. Most committees are chaired by a board member, not always, but most of the time that is the case. The committees should be working along with the executive director in partnership. And then, of course, the staff and the volunteers are working together to do the work as well. So again, this is a structure that we traditionally see. It can be different from one nonprofit to the next. So any other just initial reaction to this part of our work? Okay. Let's go to slide 19. So we're going to move from the structure of a nonprofit. We incorporated that part of our learning about board governance and oversight because what we run into oftentimes is that there are individuals who have never been a part of a nonprofit and they don't necessarily know how a nonprofit is set up or structured. A lot of times, individuals who serve on boards, their first experience oftentimes with a nonprofit is volunteering as it relates to programming. And so it's good to help them to understand the difference. Board governance versus board oversight. Governance is about protection. Oversight is about success, is a way in which we couch it. So when we are engaged in governance, we are being stewards of the mission and vision. We're partnering with the ED or the CEO. We're sharing our skills, our knowledge, and our expertise, and we are paying attention to whether or not we are in compliance with legal requirements. So when we are in governance mode, that is what we are focusing on as a board. And again, the bylaws inform some of what we do on the side of protecting the nonprofit organization. The other thing to think about when it comes to expectations and requirements as it relates to governance is that there are two government entities that inform governance: our North Carolina Secretary of State's office and the Internal Revenue. North Carolina Secretary of State's office and the Internal Revenue governance. With both of those government entities, we provide information that we are expected to share with those two entities as needed. So that's important to remember. Oversight, success. We're ensuring the work happens. We're evaluating the performance of our paid individual who is running the organization. We're working to make sure that resources are available to do the work of that nonprofit. And there's an expectation that the nonprofit organization is going to be accountable and transparent. And so again, governance, protection, oversight, success. And these are some ways to describe it. You might generate your own list of what and way of describing governance and oversight. When you are bringing new board members onto the board, it's important for them to get a really good orientation of what board governance and what board oversight, what that means. And looking at this, what is working well with your board? What is working well? What is working well? What is working well? Is it governance or oversight? Do you need to build capacity so that you're better at governing? Or do you need to build capacity so that you're better at oversight? Or at the moment, is it a combination of both? So the question we pose here is, what is working or not working, right? What's working and what's not working? So.
Dr. Parvin, someone wants you to repeat the North Carolina role in governance, the secretary comment that you made, our expectations.
The North Carolina Secretary of State's office is where, if your nonprofit is located in the US, there's a Secretary of State's office in every state. And typically when you start a nonprofit, you file your articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State's office. And that is housed there, and that's an expectation. In addition to that, you provide a impact report or an annual report to the Secretary of State's office each year. There's more to that, but that's that governance side. So the Secretary of State's office in your state keeps up with what's going on with your nonprofit in that way. The Internal Revenue, that is where you acquire the 501c determination or approval to have a nonprofit organization. We are more familiar with the 501c3, but there's probably 50 or more 501c designations that exist. But probably most of us in this space are 501c3s, I would imagine. I did see some commentation around my question. What is not working? Where do we need to build capacity? Where do we need to enhance capacity? If you are currently experiencing a board culture that you want to change, there are aspects of it you want to change, keep in mind that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And especially if your nonprofit has been in existence for a while. I often hear, in particular, executive directors say, or CEOs say, I want a more active board, or I want, my board to be more involved in fundraising, or I want whatever that desire is, be it you're a board member, board chair, volunteer, employee, CEO, ED, recognize that a culture shift of your board, it takes time. And so we are working with people, not robots. And so just keep that in mind as it relates to that. So board governance versus board oversight. Great. So if you still have your piece of paper, well, turn with me to page 32. I'll come back to that. Turn with me to page 32. We can go to the next slide, team. Well, let's go to gallery. I want to know if there are any questions at this point before I keep going. I want to know if there are any questions at this point. Let's go back to the gallery, then we'll come back to this slide. Okay. How we feeling? We good? Everybody good? All right. Any questions at this point? Of course, we got more material to cover, but any questions at this point that you have? There is a question about the slide deck. Do you want to just real quick explain the wraparound? Because folks may have missed that.
Yeah, sure. I actually was just in the extranet folder updating some things. But yeah, so we, after each session, we send out a wraparound email through Salesforce that comes in, hopefully into your inbox and not into your spam or junk folder. And it has a link to the recording from that session that we just did. It has a link to our extranet folder where we have any handouts we gave out that weren't in your workbook, the slide deck, any other materials that we have. So like, for instance, I just went in, I uploaded a contact list of all the participants in the course, so you'll have access to that and can reach out to folks you might want to collaborate, partner with, ask a question, connect with otherwise. And then I also put in that compensation report, I put in the HR folder, which will be our last session. So when you get that email from us, you can go ahead and click in there and find, download what you need. If you miss a session, you can listen to the recording, see what the notes were. I will say our slide decks tend to be just more of like a framework for the session, so I don't know how helpful they will be to you after the session, but they're there for you nonetheless. I think the workbook is going to be most important for you all to have access to, and any handouts that we give you, and the work that you're doing in there now. So like taking notes, use it as a guidebook that you can sort of facilitate your learning with. And then we provide a digital, if you ever want to make a copy, let's say you want to give something to a board to take a certain assessment that's in there, you'll have a digital copy that you can then make, go ahead and make copies of that for. All right.
There was a question about the slide deck. So we, as we facilitate each workshop, there's 6 of these, we take from each one to build out the next session. So we don't send the slide deck in advance. We send it after the wraparound. Rebecca, I don't think there's a different way that we could do that. It's just the way in which we do it, but yeah, because it could change.
Mm-hmm.
It could change.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Moving right along. Go to your workbook, page 32. Go to your workbook, page 32. Duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience. Their duties and expectations of me as a board member. And then there are expectations for the board in terms of being a body. And so typically it's kind of wrapped around these 3 duties in terms of what's expected. If there's ever a situation where we're taking a task as a board member or a board of directors, oftentimes it will be whether or not, I'm going to say violated, for lack of another way of saying it, the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience commitment that we make when we sign up to be part of a board. And so our duty of care, duty of loyalty, and duty of obedience might be challenged. And so we want to make sure that we are, as a board of directors and as a board member, we want to make sure that we are taking care of the organization. We want to make sure that we are taking care of the organization and that we are being intentional about that. We're being good stewards as it relates to being in compliance from a legal standpoint, that we are bringing resources to the organization, and through governance and oversight, we are being transparent about that, and we are ensuring that the organization has the finances that it needs to operate. So duty of care. Duty of loyalty, that we are avoiding having conflicts of interest, that we are serving with the intent to work and serve in the best interest of the organization, not our own personal benefit. And so that's an important part of how we should show up doing the work that we do as a board member and a part of a board. And then duty of obedience, that we are aligning with the laws and policies of the organization and its mission, that we are in compliance as it relates to the expectations of the Secretary of State in your state, and then also the Internal Revenue. So duty of care, duty of loyalty, duty of obedience. That is the frame in which we should serve and work as individual board members and also as a board of directors. You may add some other components to this framing, but ultimately this is what the expectation is in terms of serving. Go to page 33. We also have a checklist here with board responsibilities of the board of directors, and might I say, as board members. These are our responsibilities. So if you are on a board, obviously this is very helpful, but if you are employed with a nonprofit organization and you are interfacing with a board member and a board of directors, it's very helpful for you to have a general understanding of what my responsibilities are as a board member, and what my responsibilities are. Let's just say if I'm an officer and so on, we're going to get into some of that detail as well. Again, fundamentals. And for those of you who may be well-versed in or seasoned in working with boards and how boards work, I think it's important to kind of, as this is maybe a refresh for you, think about kind of where are you with your organization and what might you want to change, or how you might want to adjust and move forward in this space. Sarah, I keep looking at you in the window. You look like the Statue of Liberty with the
I know, with the sunburst over my head.
I was sitting here going, what does that remind me of? It reminds me of the Statue of Liberty.
That's the True Lion burst. That's what we call that.
Yes, good. Now we will all remember it. Now we know.
Yeah.
We know what that logo is. Good.
Doctor,
All right.
we have a question in the chat.
Okay.
Could the board authorize the ED to make contract decisions?
I would, my experience is contract decisions with who? Let me get some clarification before
Tiffany may have to expound.
Vendors or partnerships, in the community.
It depends. So when there's an executive director in position, and sometimes that title is CEO, right? That individual is responsible for the operations of that organization, meaning hiring, contracting, all the things, right? My approach to it, when I have been the executive director or the CEO, I do interims. I started a nonprofit from a kitchen table, et cetera, et cetera. In that role, I view the executive director or CEO as leading that decision-making. Now, it may be a practice of your nonprofit to get the board to vote on it or approve it, or to get their insight or get their perspective. But what I would encourage all of us to do is to not incorporate practices that hold up the work. Because when we're hired as the ED or the CEO, we are hired to make decisions about human resources, partnerships, collaboration, all of those things. So I would just encourage you to just kind of know and identify what that practice might be for you. I think I saw a comment in the.
In summary, Warner's asking about background checks for board members. There've been some discussion around that, and he's just wanting, he said it could be online or offline, but what
Okay.
has been others' experience around this and what level is needed, or is it even needed?
I'll
Hopefully I summed
just
that
say-
okay, Warner.
I'll just say background checks, once again, it depends on your organization, who you're working with, what the population you're working with, and why that may or may not be a imperative. I'll say that. Not all boards of directors require that. Responsibilities. Is there anything on our list that you say to yourself, I don't know what that is? You can generate your own list. This is a board responsibilities checklist, but you can generate your own list. We have duties and expectations as board members and as a board of directors. And so if we have guidelines, we should hold us all accountable to those.
Could you speak a little to board performance assessment? Like, who does that?
You can do self-assessments. Your board chair might decide, or executive committee, that you want to utilize some tool for that. Again, you determine the practice in terms of who does that. I have worked with boards where we do, each individual board member completes a self-assessment, and then we compile that, talk about it, and decide what we want to work on. And I've also worked with boards where we do like an overall board evaluation. And we're going to do a little bit of that as a part of our work today. Team, if we could go to slide 21.
I'm sorry, could you talk more about the Court of Appeal?
Let me see, which number are we? Or where there's no number, which one is at the bottom?
It's like fifth from the bottom.
Oh, yes. So it may be that you have your structure, the way in which that nonprofit is set up. It may be that you are making decisions in terms of selecting or making a selection. So for example, some nonprofits offer grants. They issue their grants to other nonprofits. And let's say a nonprofit doesn't get a grant, it's not approved, right? There may be an appeal process. So again, it has a lot to do with how that is set up. The other way in which that might show up is it might show up if there is a grievance of some sort, and an individual they could be a volunteer or they could be a paid staff person, and they want the board to hear their situation and make the board aware of their situation. So they may serve a board, and or it may be a subcommittee, it may be an ad hoc committee that does that. I currently chair a board that we actually have an appeals committee because of the type of work that nonprofit does. So it doesn't apply to all of them, but it could very well be just based on the work that you do. Anything else there, Lisa? We always get lots of questions as it relates to board governance and oversight, because each organization is so different. The practices that you adopt and that you use is going to be different, and it's going to be different based on a lot of factors. So what we try to do is give you kind of a general kind of way of framing and thinking about your nonprofit in particular. I'm sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Matt's asking for a template for a board assessment. Wait a minute.
We're going to get, yeah,
Hey,
we're
yeah,
going to get
that's what
to
I,
one.
yeah, I was just saying
Yeah,
that.
we
Yeah,
have
we'll
one.
get to
We're
that.
going to
Yeah,
get to it here in a minute.
yeah.
Yep.
Rebecca
All
guided
right.
them there already. Yeah.
Bylaws and legal compliance. So there are two sources that we want you to reference here. One is your actual bylaws. In your bylaws, there should be term limits for board members. There should be a disclaimer about conflict of interest, and we don't have it on this slide, but also confidentiality. Some of your nonprofits require that board members sign a conflict of interest agreement and a maintaining confidentiality agreement. It varies. But term limits, conflict of interest, confidentiality agreements, there's typically no monetary compensation for serving on a board. You might get reimbursed for expenses, driving somewhere, going to a conference, et cetera, but typically there's no compensation. And then legal compliance. The North Carolina Center for Nonprofits has a legal compliance checklist. So what we're going to show you here, we're going to show you two things. We're going to show you a sample bylaws and kind of show you where some different pieces of information are related to these bullet points. And then we're going to show you a legal compliance checklist that we have available here at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits. So team, if we could pop up the sample bylaws. Well, let me go to the gallery first. How many of you have never seen bylaws before for a nonprofit? Never, 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 never. Let me see. Anybody? Anybody? Never, 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 never. Okay, so we all have. Great, 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 great. All right. Again, bylaws are written at the inception of the nonprofit when that nonprofit is seeking the 501c status with the Internal Revenue. Bylaws are required as a part of that application. So if you're wanting to start a nonprofit or your nonprofit exists already, there are bylaws that were written, that were submitted to the Internal Revenue at the point of applying for that 501c status. So that is required by the Internal Revenue. The North Carolina Secretary of State's office requires what is called articles of incorporation. And the way that works in North Carolina is you're answering a series of questions and it's labeled articles of incorporation. So just so you kind of know. And those are the two entities that we're talking about here in terms of bylaws and legal compliance. Yes, Shanice.
Hi, yeah, it's Shaunis actually.
All right, Shaunis.
Yeah, so bylaws, you answered that question for me. They're created at the inception. Over time, do bylaws ever get modified? And
Yes.
if they do, does it have to go back through the IRS for approval, or what is that like?
Typically, the North Carolina Secretary of State's office expects us to upload any amendments or anything like that. The Internal Revenue, we can also provide those amended bylaws. I've not experienced where if you didn't provide your amended bylaws to either group, I've not experienced what the actions are if you don't. Most organizations provide it, so. Bylaws can be amended. It's at the discretion of the board and the leadership of that nonprofit. Team, can we pop up the bylaws? We are rolling today. My gosh, time is going fast. Okay, all right. So here is a sample of bylaws. This is actually the Guilford County Resource and Referral Center. This is a nonprofit that I helped start back in 2009. This is a sample of what we were able to develop at that time. So if you kind of scroll through here, there's an indication of the organization, the purpose of the nonprofit, what the membership of whether or not it's a membership organization or not, how we meet. This is an important part of the bylaws, to indicate when we meet. For this particular nonprofit, we indicate the annual meeting, the regular meetings, special meetings. That information is listed here. How the nonprofit votes, that information is here as well. The order of business in terms of what an agenda might look like at a board meeting. The board of directors is another section here, in terms of the roles, and also in terms of the voting. There is also an expectation for this nonprofit that every board member give an annual financial contribution, so that the organization can display 100% of financial support. Not every nonprofit requires that. The officers for this nonprofit, there's a section in the bylaws and what the roles are: the president, the vice president, the secretary, the treasurer, and we don't compensate officers for this organization. There are no salaries for boards of directors. There are committees, so there are instructions about committees. There's also a way to amend or change or add to the bylaws. There's a notification here. Typically, there is is there anything else after this? That it? All right, perfect. Thank you. So bylaws, if you have not had a chance to take a look at your organization's bylaws, they should be available to you for you to be able to do that. The next thing I want to do is share here at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits what we call our legal compliance checklist. And so, Rebecca, do you want to take it from here, or do you want me to just keep going?
Yep, I can
Okay.
share. Just waiting for it to load. There we go. All right. Allow. Place current share. There we go. Oh, thanks, Leslie. I'll share the actual zoomed in so people can see what it offers. That's okay. So this is the sample of the legal compliance checklist that we update annually and provide to our members for free, and non-members can get it for a small fee.
Desktop image is shown, not the form.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I was looking down at my sheet. Yeah, it went away.
Let's see.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for letting me know. Let's see. Maybe is this going to be better? Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what's great about it is that it goes through all these questions for 501c3s about their legal compliance issues or updates that they need to make sure are taking place. And so you as the organization can go through and say, some of these may or may not apply to you, but it tells you, sort of who has to do that legally compliant thing that you're being required or asked to do, and then how and when to do it. It gives you a link. It tells you how often. It gives you any special caveats if there's anything that's new or updated or different that you may not be used to, because changes do happen from time to time. And so as you go through this, I know it looks like a lot, but most of these things you're probably already doing, but it just gives you a sense of relief that that you're on top of it. And when board members or say a funder comes to you and is asking for certain things, you sort of have them in place already because you're doing all these items on this checklist. So we'll put the link in the chat for where this tool can be downloaded, and or purchased if you're not a member. But hopefully most of you, as I think, are members. So you have access to this as a free tool that gets updated annually.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So again, we've covered duties and expectations, and we've covered bylaws and legal compliance. And so we are going to move to financial management and fundraising responsibilities. So a part of the governance and oversight of, in terms of our responsibility, is financial management and fundraising responsibilities. I will go ahead and share with you that we will do an entire session on financial management and fundraising. So just kind of know that's coming. But the takeaway here is that as a board member and as the board of directors, we are working along with the executive director, the CEO, the staff, to manage the finances of the organization. And so the board there is a report out on a regular basis, and your organization determines that what regular basis is. But typically, minimally, you will get a report out, or a board of directors should get a report out of financial reports whenever you have a board meeting. That's minimal. So there is a communication of, this is our current financial position. This is our current financial position. So financial management is a part of the governance and oversight. And then fundraising responsibilities. Most often board members or board of directors have a role in helping that nonprofit engage in fundraising. So that's another part of it's different for each organization. Notice in that set of bylaws that we looked at, for that nonprofit, board members are expected to make a donation of some sort to that organization. So financial management, fundraising responsibilities, and the board of directors is also instrumental in helping to make sure that we have people, whether they're volunteers or whether they're paid, that we provide policies and procedures and oversee that with the executive director and or CEO. So financial management, fundraising responsibilities, and also supporting the funding of human resources. That is important in terms of that. Team, can we go to slide 23? Also, we are going to share with you like a link that gives you examples of financial reporting. We're going to come back to that in a full session, but we do have a link for you to so that you can see that. And we're going to use that later. So when you see that link, it's a Big Brothers Big Sisters nonprofit. We're going to provide you with the financial reporting there. Like I said, we'll come back to that. Fundraising is a part of our duties and responsibilities as well. All right, so agenda check-in. So we have been on a roll today. We are a little over halfway of our content. We're going to take a break, and we are going to come back and begin with funding human resources. We're going to highlight that just a little bit more. And then we're going to get into accountability and evaluation. And so we got some hands-on work for you to do within the next hour. But just want to do just a check-in with you in terms of the agenda and where we are. And any thoughts here? Right now you're thinking what? Right now you're feeling what? If we go to the gallery, team. Right now you're thinking, right now you're feeling. What's going on in your head, in your, is the adrenaline going? Are you know, I'm just checking in with them, Lisa. Just checking in. How we doing before we take this break? We're good?
Good.
All right.
Good.
Now, I will
important.
just as a kind of a reminder, we said this last week, you will have a wealth of information when we are finished with this experience. You will have a library of information when we are finished with this experience. So that we do know. I see thumbs up, I see hearts and balloons, and I see, I'm making that part up, but anyway, I see good vibes, good vibes going on there. It is 11:25. Again, this is a Zoom break. You know, this is not an in-person type break, but this is a Zoom break. The sun is shining where I am, or at least it's trying to, so it might be good to get a little bit of walk outside and walk back in, as we've been sitting right in this space with our heads in this little window for quite some time this morning. So it's 11, well, it was 11:25, now it's 11:26. Let's come back around 11:32, 11:33-ish. Let's come back around that time. You'll hear my voice when it's time to come back. Hopefully you got a snack. I did. I got a quick snack. Anybody get some sunshine?
There is none. Over
Oh,
where
I have some here.
it's not in Durham.
Oh, wow. It is in Greensboro.
We're so close. Maybe it's on its way.
And
Maybe.
Winston, I was able to go outside in Winston.
Oh, good. Yeah, it is, it's breaking through. It's coming on through. That's good. We've had some really good weather the last couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. Some really, really good weather. Okay, we've got about 3 or 4 more topics to cover. We've got 1 or 2 hands-on exercises that we want us to do. Today was a little bit more information out as it relates to board governance and oversight. And so when we think about the human resources of a board of directors, team, we can go to slide 24. When we think about our role as board members and officers of boards, it is important to keep in mind the fact that we are trying to ensure that we have a good balance in terms of our composition of our boards. And it has a lot to do with what our mission is, what our purpose is, what our focus is, as it relates to being mindful of equity, as it relates to our board of directors, being inclusive in that way. And again, specifically in alignment with what our mission and purpose and vision is. Board recruitment and retention. We as board members, it is important for us to keep an eye out for folks who would be good matches for the boards that we serve on. And we should be trying to recruit and retain board members as well. Developing our board of directors is another part of that. Sometimes we need training, sometimes we need technical assistance, and then ultimately just overall capacity building of the organization. So funding human resources. We at the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits do have as principle number 3, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that is on page 9 of the principles and practices guide. And so that is important to keep in mind there. So funding human resources. That's a part of what we do as as a board of directors. Accountability and evaluation. Accountability and evaluation. Again, training and performance of the board of directors versus the executive director role. We can go to the next slide. The board chair versus the executive director, evaluating the board and the executive director, and then supporting and leading strategic planning of the organization. Again, we've talked about duties and expectations. We've talked about the bylaws and compliance. We've talked about the human resources that are needed in order for us to govern and provide oversight. Well, then there's this element of accountability and evaluation in terms of those board responsibilities that we saw on the checklist on page 33. On page 35, there's the governance and oversight, and we kind of showed that also on the slide here. And then the board of directors job descriptions. Go in your workbook to page 36. Job descriptions. Now, you can expand upon these job descriptions as it relates to your nonprofit, but it is important for individuals that serve on the board to be oriented and onboarding to the organization. So that's important. So we've got a description here for the board member, for the vice chair, for the committee chair, for the secretary, for the treasurer. If you go to page 38, I'm moving around just a little bit, you'll see the board chair description. So on page 36, we have the board of directors job descriptions, the board member, the vice chair, the committee chair, the secretary, the treasurer. And then if you go to page 38, we've got the board chair description. The board chair description. So in terms of thinking about what these descriptions should look like, I do think it's important minimally for us to orient board members. We're talking about managing a nonprofit, to orient board members to what these jobs are, so that when they see individuals working in these roles, they have an understanding of what that is. And it's a little bit of a learning curve if board members have never volunteered to be on a board before. And by the same token, sometimes we have executive directors or CEOs who've never been an executive director or CEO before. So, so again, this kind of helps us to have some prompts for those descriptions. Where I want to spend a little bit more time, and take a look at page 36 and 38. I'm going to pause before I go to the next item. And let me know if there's anything there that you don't understand or that's not clear to you. And if we could go back to gallery team, that would be great. On page 36 and 38, is there anything there that you kind of say, I don't really know what that means? Board member, vice chair, committee chair, secretary. Now, remember in your bylaws, if you have standing committees, there should be a description of those committees in the bylaws. I mean, that should, because that's a part of your governance structure. So that's important to keep in mind. Important to keep in mind. Is there anything there that you don't quite understand, or you kind of say you're not clear about? And I'll pause while you all take a look at that.
So Dr. Palmer, you mentioned standing committee, but then there are also ad hoc committees. Like, what is the difference? And is there sort of core standing committees and
So
organizations?
standing committees are those committees that your nonprofit decide that it wants to maintain. So those are your standing committees. So without a doubt, those committees, in other words, are going to be established. You're going to work to have chairs of those committees, and those committees are going to be actively doing work on behalf of that nonprofit. Those are standing. That is the preference of the leadership of that nonprofit. Your ad hoc committees are those committees that you establish for something special, something that's not going to be ongoing. You know, so it might be that you create an ad hoc committee, like for some, an appeals committee is an ad hoc committee. The appeals committee may not be one of those committees that is considered standing.
Okay.
Is there anything on
So-
page? Mhm. Yes, go ahead, Sandra.
No, so I'm thinking a fundraising committee or a development committee, is that typically a standing committee or an ad hoc committee?
It's typically standing, but I always say it depends on your nonprofit. You know, it's how you identify, but do you typically see fundraising and fund development as a standing? Yes, you do. But that doesn't necessarily mean every nonprofit has that as a standing committee.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Yep.
Administrative assistant currently serves as the secretary for our board. Is that unusual?
Say that again. I didn't catch the first part. I heard the
Our
secretary
administrative
part.
assistant for the foundation serves as the secretary for the board.
Did you say, I'm sorry, you said something assistant. I was talking, I think, when you were trying to talk to.
Our administrative assistant.
Mhm. So here's how I would practice that. I get it that the administrative assistant is literally taking the notes and all of that. Typically staff are not a member of the board, and typically staff do not carry titles as a board member would. But is it common for administrative staff to help craft the notes or the minutes? Yes, but they are not the ones to submit the minutes. It is the secretary or the board chair or the vice chair or however you have that structure. And I'll just say, Jennifer, there are times when I've served as secretary on a board of a nonprofit, and I asked for that help as the secretary. So, you know, but it varies. It varies. All right. Let's go to page 37. I want to spend some time on page 37. I want to spend some time on page 37 because we find ourselves sometimes in some very challenging scenarios when we don't understand the difference in the role of the board and the role of the executive director and CEO. If your nonprofit has an executive director or CEO, whether they're volunteering or whether they're paid, and I say that because I was the executive director as a volunteer of a nonprofit for a minute. I had, I was volunteering, but I had to perform in that way. So it's important for us as a board to stay in our lane. We are not responsible for the day-to-day operations of the nonprofit, meaning that executive director or that CEO should be empowered to run the organization. And my thermometer is when we start to make, as a board, when we start to make the job of the ED or the CEO more difficult, then we probably are not in our lane. We're probably out of our lane. We need to stay in our lane. They have a job description. We hired them. We gave them instructions on what their job is. Board of directors, let them do their job. Executive director and CEO, remind us, if you have to, of what our role is. And I know that's a delicate dance, I know it is, because some board members think they're in charge of everything. Well, they're not if you have an ED or CEO. And if you're not there yet with your board, start to work in a way where you ask them to empower you to lead and manage the organization. That's very important. On page 37, we try to give you a little bit of a snippet on the difference in the two. The board creates the policies and the executive director executes or moves those policy forward, and they also enforce those policies on a day-to-day basis. We as a board, we set guidelines and we make policies, but the director makes the decisions, all the decisions about the enforcement of those policies, meaning on a day-to-day basis. So it's important for us to remember that. It's important for us to remember that. And here's something else. We should work, because we're talking about managing a nonprofit, and we're talking about the art and science, right? The science of managing the work of the board is where we are with this. And so it's important for us to keep that in mind. The way we have it visually illustrated here, if this helps, the board of directors might be the leaders and the executive director is the manager. That's not to say that the executive director doesn't lead. They lead, but just in terms of some degree of separation, that's important to remember. Oftentimes we will find ourselves in situations that are not healthy for the organization because we don't understand our roles. Some board chairs think they're the executive director. You know, on some things. They don't want to be the executive director of everything, but they want to be the executive director on something. It doesn't work that way. And so we have to help our boards understand how they can be most useful to us in their roles. So that's important. And I know all the executive directors and CEOs are going, woo, woo, yay, thank you, Dr. Palmer. Yep, I've been there, done that. So it's very important for us to understand that. When I am chairing a board, I am following when I'm chairing a board. I am letting the executive director and the CEO do their job. And I am asking routinely, how can I help you? How can I assist you? How can I support you? Not how can I tell you what to do? That's not how that works. So it's important to try to create that. Yes, Shaunis, did I get it right?
You did.
Got it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Can you give maybe top of mind? I don't want to take up too much time, but top of mind, what are one or two examples or topics that you have seen be real tension points for that ED versus chair type of situation? Are there any themes there?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes. Number one, trying to supervise staff. That is not the board's job. We are not there to supervise staff. Let's stay out of that. Don't go there. That's the ED, the CEO. When the ED or CEO invites us to be a part of that, then we're a resource. But let them lead that. We shouldn't have comments. We shouldn't be meeting with staff. That is probably my number one. When you start to see that happen, start to bring that to a minimum, to none. That can get scary. Board members, stay out of HR, stay out of personnel matters. Let your CEO, ED, let them lead that. Lisa, I know you have some experience with that. Any thoughts or comments?
No, you said it. I'm over here chuckling. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly the point.
Yes, yes, don't go there. And encourage your board members that that's not their role. That's not their role. If you need them, you know where to find them, right?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Deion Sanders says that if you know where to find them. But anyway, go ahead, Shanice.
Yeah, if you don't mind, a follow-up question. So the ED is typically, they report to the board / they're not really on the board, but they sit in on the board meetings, etc. Is it typical for any board members to also play a dual role of being like a consultant or a part-time staff member, or is that getting funky also?
That is the latter part of what you just said. I wouldn't encourage that. No, ma'am.
Okay.
I wouldn't encourage that. You know, stay in your lane. If you want to be a consultant, you might just want to step aside until you get finished with that work or whatever it is that you're doing. That can get a little messy.
That's what I thought, but okay, so that's
Yeah.
okay. So it is not
Mhm.
unheard of to poke at that a little bit, is what I'm hearing.
But
Okay.
that is correct. That is
Thank you.
correct. Yep. Team, I know we don't have this here as a note, but can we go into breakouts to do this next exercise by role? Is that
Sure.
doable?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Sure.
All right. So in your workbook on page 40, you're going to go into breakout and you're going to work on this together. Okay. And you're going to answer these questions since we're on a roll with this whole executive director, CEO responsibilities and duties and the board responsibilities and duties. On page 40, you have a series of questions to answer as it relates to the position of the executive director. And so we want you to complete this in a breakout space, okay? And so Rebecca is going to put you in a breakout. We're going to, Rebecca, do you think we need more than say 5 or 7 minutes? Maybe 7?
Yeah, we can do 7.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep. I wanna make sure.
You're going into your breakout by roles and you're going to answer the questions on page 40 together.
Okay. I'll go ahead and open those up.
This is a very, what I would consider to be salient or important part of kind of how a board of directors should kind of do its work. And we should be working and alongside and with in partnership with our executive director, CEO. We should be almost like an additional team working along with that executive director to help do the things that are necessary. So let's just jump right in here in terms of the responses that you have for, or that your group had for the executive director position. Let's see. Who hires the executive director? Who hires them?
Board.
The board? Yes.
Our vice chancellor of business and finance, we're a little bit different because
Okay.
our state employees of the university. So everything,
Okay.
reports up through the vice chancellors.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
But the board, executive committee, they are a part of the interviewing process.
Gotcha. Yes. Typically, it is the board of directors that take lead on hiring the executive director. If your nonprofit has the resources, sometimes that is outsourced for a search to fill that role. Oftentimes the executive committee will serve as the search committee. And then sometimes the nonprofit will set up a unique search committee for that purpose. So that's important as it relates to that. Let's see. Who hires other staff?
The ED.
Executive
The
director.
Executive director in our case.
Yes, and it does depend on the org structure. So if there's a C-suite to your nonprofit or there's a director or management level, oftentimes the individual, the recruits or the candidates, whoever they're going to report to, oftentimes they're a part of that hiring process too. But typically the ED is leading that. Let's see, who evaluates the performance of the executive director?
Board chair.
Combination of
Board
the board and the vice chancellor of business and finance with us.
Yes. Board chair often takes lead on that, in terms of that. And here's the other thing you want to make a note of. If we're I'll just say utilizing some best practices. The chair is probably the board member that interfaces and works the closest with the ED and the CEO. So that person really does have a good sense of who the ED is. Who evaluates the performance of the other staff?
The ED.
ED takes lead on that, or the individuals who have those direct reports.
Yeah.
Who can terminate?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
I was agreeing. Yeah, that's how it is with us. Mhm.
Okay. Who can terminate the employment of the executive director?
With us, it would be the board of trustees. They give that directive to the vice chancellor of business and finance, and then he acts upon it.
Okay, all right. And you do know an executive director can terminate their own employment if they want to. So always keep that in mind. The CEO can make that decision too. So I always remind boards, you know, you're in a situation when the ED abruptly is not with you. So just make sure we're taking care of our CEOs. Who can terminate the employment of other staff?
The ED.
ED takes lead, board work alongside. The ED might consult with the board. That's great if that's helpful. There may be a human resource committee, maybe, or a personnel committee that could also be helpful in that regard. Do you feel that your governing board members fully understand the duties and responsibilities of the executive director? Now, you were working with a group, so how did you fare with whether or not folks really do understand the responsibilities of the executive director? Yes, no, maybe.
In my case, because of this kind of combining of the two and looking at the differences between the two boards, my current board or my nonprofits board is very well aware of their responsibilities, but they're going into this merger with marching orders, you know, to acclimate the old board who's being led by the ED. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get through it. It you know, it
It
happens.
hurts right now, though. It hurts. It hurts to
I
watch,
know.
you know.
Understood.
Oh my goodness.
Understood. But yeah,
HR
you'll get through
grievances,
it.
all kinds of stuff. Like it just
Yeah,
all bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's because we're human beings and not robots. That's right. I mean, you know, it's about people.
Yeah.
And so, and we have to remember that I know this topic is about board governance and oversight, but we are only as helpful to that nonprofit as we are able to work with the person that's leading and managing it. I mean, that's just important to understand. So that's why we spend time. That's why we spend time on this. The other thing I would say about this item here about fully understand, highlight fully understand the duties and responsibilities of everything. The executive director and CEO of a nonprofit, especially the more smaller, medium-sized organizations, they are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They are never not the ED. They are never not the CEO. If you are providing programs and services like a shelter or services on the weekend, or all those things that we as board members dream up that we want the nonprofit to do, well, when we do that, then that means that ED or CEO is responsible for that. Whenever that organization is in operation, that ED or that CEO is responsible. That is their job. That's their role. So I always say, fully understand what that means. How often does the board chair meet with the executive director other than at board meetings, or should? I'm sorry, how often does the board chair meet? How often?
Just meet about on a monthly basis.
Monthly basis, weekly? Okay. Any board chairs in the room? Any board chairs here today? Where are my board chairs? No? Yes? Yes. I'm chairing 2 boards right now personally, but okay. All right. Okay. So here's what I do as board chair. I meet with my executive director or CEO at least once a week. At least, whether a phone call or a Zoom call, I just check in. Anything I need to know, anything you need from me, I ask that executive director or CEO to commit that time so that I'm in the loop and I know what's going on. So that's just my preference. And whenever I have served as the executive director or CEO, I make that request of the chair. That just helps me that we're on the same page. Lisa McMillan.
Hey, thank you. So one of the issues, we're in a somewhat of a transition. Everyone has been all volunteers, and therefore I'm founder, executive director, and board chair because we've never had any money to pay. But my board has been working diligently to try to find a way for me or some other ED to be paid. So right now I'm in this transition working with a tentative board chair so that come next year, should we have funding for me to be paid, I'll be able to step out of that role because that's kind of counterproductive. The question I have for you is, should I be removed because I'm holding all those hats before that's in place, even if it doesn't look likely that the operation will be sustainable if I get a salary? Because, I'm in the founding and ED kind of side, so.
I encourage you to have one role or the other. Either be the board chair or be the executive director. That would be my suggestion. Any follow-up to that, Lisa? Okay, just keep it separate. If you're fortunate enough to have a board and you've got board members, I would recruit one of those board members to be the chair if your preference, if that's kind of where you are, because we know the executive director work, it needs, and there's work that has to be done and should be done. And I would imagine your board members may not be interested in being the executive director, but they may very well support you in being the chair of the board. So choose a role in that regard. And especially if you're the founder, because you're very close to everything. So separate those duties, separate those roles. I've been right where you are. Okay, how is annual compensation determined?
These are governed by the General Assembly since we're within the UNC system, so.
Typically
based on the budget and industry standards.
Yes, and also the chair is involved in that. How your organization decides that it's gonna either remain the same or if it's gonna change or any of those kinds of things. So kind of like the folks that kind of help with the recruiting and the searching and all that, that's a good group to go back to when you start talking about, promoting and advancing and the role or the resources or benefits of that ED. That's exactly right. All right, last hands-on thing we're gonna do, I want you to go to page 41. So that is our kind of overview of what the executive director role is and why it's important for we as board members and a board of directors to understand what our role is so that the organization is able to do all the great and wonderful work that it is doing. Now I want you to evaluate your board. So whatever board you're representing, to the degree that you can, if you're serving on a board, you can use this to evaluate that. Or if you're a part of a nonprofit organization, and for this exercise, you want to evaluate the board that you are, that you work closely with, then you can feel free to do that. So you choose the board that you want to evaluate. The goal here is for you to use the tool, right? And there are all sorts of resources out there. Board Source is a really good source for you to find all kind of resources, instruments, tools, scorecards, evaluations, Lots of that's available. The NC Center for Nonprofits, we have a location on our website where if you're a member, et cetera, you can access that information. So you are evaluating your board. There are 3 sections to this evaluation. The first section is you're indicating what needs improvement and what is excellent. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 equals needs improvement, 5 equals excellent. Assess the organization by rating the items below. So 1 through 10, you're going to rate needs improvement or excellent. In section 2, these are some priority areas for improvement. You might add some here. These might not be the only items for your organization. You can modify this evaluation as needed. So you're going to indicate which of the following areas do you think the board should improve this coming year? So that gives you that. And then we've got some open-ended questions around the board. 2 most important things for the organization to have accomplished last year. Were they accomplished? To what degree did the board contribute to success or failure? Ooh, that's a loaded one, right? Did we contribute to the success of our accomplishments last year, or did we contribute to the not so successful reality of that? Second is, what would you change about the board? 2 things that you would change. Third, what would you change about the organization? What 2 things would that be? And what makes you the most proud of the board that you are evaluating? What makes you the most proud? So I'm going to go silent for about 3 minutes and let you, 3 to 5 minutes, and let you through the evaluation. As we mentioned before, you will have a library of resources when you are finished with the Institute. Mhm. Okay. I want to go over to what makes you the most proud. Tell us what makes you the most proud of the board that you are evaluating for this exercise. What makes you the most proud about this board?
Well, with our board, what made me the most proud is when we were faced with some challenges, it wasn't even a second thought. Everyone immediately rolled their sleeves, dove in, and immediately began to problem solve and to establish some strategy to get over those hurdles and to make sure that the going concern of the organization was protected. I mean, they pulled in all of their resources, their expertise in certain areas, rallied around the executive director to make sure that in the end, the organization would be whole and stronger and strengthened and not, and then also put parameters in place to make sure that it would not find itself in that position again. So that is really one thing I'm truly proud of.
Isn't that awesome though? If you ever witness that, because keep in mind, I don't have to tell this group this. We are focused on making a difference in community. And we are focused on helping and being resourceful. I mean, that's what most of our nonprofits, if not all, that's what they're set up to do, especially if they carry the 501c3 designation, right? And so when you see that play out, when there's a crisis or there's something that might jeopardize the establishment or the operations of that organization, it's an awesome thing to watch. And so thank you for sharing that. Anybody else, what makes you the most proud of the board that you evaluated?
Related to the mission of our foundation. Many of them have served for a long time and they continue to be dedicated to that mission.
Yeah, you know, some of us serve on boards forever. Like we just can't, for some reason, we can't get enough. But we're so appreciative when people decide that they're going to commit to our organization, to stand with us and to just be committed for such a long time. Let's hear one more. What are you the most proud of about the board that you evaluated?
If I could offer some encouragement, especially for those of us who are founders and are new, I'm so thankful that my board, I don't know anything about what I'm doing operating this nonprofit, but they do not make me feel that way. It's me that is always yielding and saying, hey, I need y'all's help, but they are so supportive of the passion that I have to serve me personally and the organization. And the note, when you asked that question, the first thing I thought of was last year was so personally hard for me, but nobody in the community knew it because the board actually rallied around and took up space in places where I had to disconnect. My son was deployed to the Middle East for the first time, and they stepped into places that I would have been, and nobody in the community knew it. So that is very valuable. If you can find those kinds of people who have your back and you don't have to suffer personal or professional ramifications when you do encounter issues. So I'm thankful for that.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. Wow. See, I knew we were going to go there. I just knew it. I just knew it. But, and for those of you who are in this space today, and not only do you work with a nonprofit organization, but you also serve on a board of a nonprofit organization. We appreciate you and thank you for all that you do in your communities. You are needed. Don't ever think you're not, even when it gets tough. Serving on boards, especially now, we need your commitment and we need your steadfastness to do all the things that are necessary. So remember to say thank you and how much you appreciate to your fellow board members wherever you are. Last slide, team, slide 27. We've already covered this topic today, but I just want to remind us about, as we're thinking about what makes us proud about the board that we evaluated using the tool in our workbook, keep in mind that we are able to share those proud moments because of the board composition. We are able to share those proud moments because we have identified individuals that align with our mission and that they are a good match for the cause and what it is that we're doing. There are different number of board members that that are identified in bylaws in terms of how many board members. All of our boards have different cultures that we serve on and that we're a part of. We need skills, professional expertise, experience, education. We need all of that. We need connections. We need influence serving on our boards. And we need a real solid executive committee standing with that ED or that CEO, making all the things happen the way that they should be so that the organization is able to be sustaining. And so board composition is our last subtopic for board governance and oversight. Team, if we could go back to the gallery. Man, we covered a lot today. Like a whole lot, like a lot. I'm getting ready to pass this over to Rebecca here in just a minute. Rebecca, I'm going to go ahead and let the group know what to bring for the next session next week. We are going to start off our time together next week. I'm going to have you to create an illustration. That's called the tee up for that teaser for next week. I'm going to have you produce an image. So if you could bring with you next week, you can use an 8.5 by 11 sheet of plain paper. That'll work. But if you have 11 by 17 sheet, that's bigger. Like you can create a bigger image, right? And then like maybe colored pencils or crayons or some kind of markers that'll add a little color to your image. If you would bring that wasn't hard, right? So just a piece of paper and some creative tools that you might have access to. We're going to start off with an exercise where I'm going to ask you to produce an image. So get ready. All right, Rebecca, I'm passing it on to you. Thank you all so much for your time today. It was great. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Palmer. This is a really good session. I appreciate everyone's participation and just being willing to ask questions, even when you think like, oh, I should know this. It's okay. Like everybody's got to learn from some place, and the place where they're at is the best place to do that. So thanks, everybody. Here's a detail around our upcoming sessions, our session next week on program design, management, evaluation. I'm going to ask Leslie to go ahead and put the session evaluation in the chat. We do read these and go over them, consult them as we go into each session. So we really do value your feedback. We like to get them from session to session so we can see changes and whatnot. Hopefully it doesn't take you too long to complete that. We also will reminder about the LinkedIn group. If you haven't joined, we'll go ahead and put that link in the wraparound email again, so you all have that. And I also wanted to mention a couple of upcoming things we have. One of them is a policy conversation. If those of you are based in or around Wilson County, we have a policy conversation that's coming up. It's being hosted by the Healthcare Foundation of Wilson. If you're a nonprofit that's actually based in Wilson, you can attend for free, but the rates are really accessible for everybody, whether you're a member or a non-member. So I put that link in the chat. And then also a quick reminder on the next slide that our conference registration is open. Oh, here's member benefits. Sorry, I skipped over that. We compile member benefits by topic area, so this will always be in the in your wraparound. You'll see a link to any of the member benefits that we think are tied, for instance, to board governance. We're going to compile those there for you for easy reference. So you'll see we've got pro bono, certainly. As a member, you can get access to pro bono support in legal and coaching. And then we've got some publications and resources below there with links to all those. And then also our money saving partnership with Nonprofit Quarterly. So all those things are there. And then I did want to mention before we close that a reminder that registration for conference is open. Want to make sure you all get access to that early bird rate. If you're interested in joining us for this event, it's going to be really cool. We're updating the schedule this week, so you'll get to see the sessions that are being featured and the speakers that we're going to have. So keep an eye out for that update and that reminder about conference coming up in November in Research Triangle Park. And with that, I think we'll stick around for what we're calling office minutes, not office hours, because we've been on for hours, so we'll just stay on for a couple more minutes. Office minutes for those of you that have any burning questions. I know there was one that I responded to in the chat, asked Leslie if she could stay on with us to go over that question that you had. Hopefully you're still available and able to join. So with that, thanks everybody, and hope you have a good rest of your week. And feel free to stay on if you have any questions.